Good, Count Kohler. I too am glad to get to speak here this evening on this bill. And I was confused, Minister, as many others. And, you know, we have a desperate housing crisis. And look, we've failed utterly to tackle it. But, you know, we have a debate in the House, and we have ideologies really coming from the left, and indeed a lack of solutions coming from the centre, which I'm always proud to represent, and indeed the government parties. And panic has set in, and I wish you well, Minister, and both Ministers well on this, but I honestly think that we've lost our way. And instead of a pressure zone talking about it here, which there is need for many areas, we should be talking about the pressure cooker of the lack of housing and the inability of the young, not so young, very quite old as well, to solve the housing crisis. And it's not simple. I know it's not simple. And you know, I have no ideological hang up about having foreign investment and for the banks to lend, but we have to have the kind of leverage. The previous speaker mentioned over 50% of the, or almost 48% of the houses, there's some government involved in them. That's not sustainable either. But I don't know if we go back to Sean Lemass and go back to those years and how we built the house. And we had no AI, and we had none of the geniuses, and we had none of the degrees coming out our ears that we talk about now, and we had plain common sense and hard work and hard graft. And we mentioned builders like Halley's and Alfin, I'm sure, John Cole, you had many in your constituency, and many other contractors who employed literally hundreds of men. And indeed, my own late dad was a small contractor and built about some houses, Deputy McGinnis might like to know, in Waterford Council and indeed in Tip Council. As a small set-up self-employed man, I was able to build them. And built them with the Land Commission. That's not today nor yesterday. But now it's so difficult. We've tied ourselves in complete red tape. And Hobby has another viewers, Count Kohler was, and I'm sure he all the time, like we had zone land, we had probably too much zone land, definitely. But you've appointed, then I mean, the last government, you were in the make-up of that as well, the new office of the planning regulator. We never had one, and I don't know if we ever needed one. It's like all the quankos we set up now with big organisations, nice plush offices, fancy offices, and a brass plate on their own. Quanko land. And he overstepped his mark completely. And I take my own, just to come in and talk to my own daughter, who was a councillor in the Care district in Tipperary County Council, and we had 60 acres of his own land, and he put it down to 10. And now the council are grappling ideas to have been told by the manager we want to rezone some of that again. This is only in the last 2 years. And they're going to have to contravene development plans that are all made. That's unnecessary bureaucracy that was brought in there, and confusion reigned. While he went off on a tangent, there was need for planning regulation, yes, but he went on a tangent of dezoning all this land, whatever he thought that was going to get him. I don't know. And that's a mess, nothing short of it. And I don't know how he feels now about what you're saying about zoning land. He made his kind of de facto he got into his name by this policy. A tough man, going to teach all the councils a lesson. These own this land, and of course councils could do what they like, but he overruled the whole lot. Mistake, big mistake. So is he going to be relieved of his post and that office stood down? Obviously, if we're going to have a complete change of policy that we want to rezone more land now again, it's fundamentally makes his position untenable. So that's one area. The other area then is the Irish water. It's there. I mean, look, every town and village that I know, most of them that I know, they're at capacity. And they haven't the funds, and they're costing too much money. And they're not able to fit for purpose, again set up by elements of by Fine Gael, under Phil Hogan, and they've been an unmitigated disaster. Because they're not interested in local knowledge, or interested in talking to local people, or workers that the council had for decades and are with them now. They don't want to listen, they know it all. That's a bad thing for anyone in any job, to say they know it all. Then, as I said, with the whole situation of you have made the standards of houses so unattainable. In actual fact, they're unhealthy, in my opinion. I'm not a scientist, not a medical person, but the airtight houses, they're unhealthy. They're locked up all day, then people are going to work, and there's not a breeze going through them. But that's fine for private houses if they want that. But then you have decided to have the BER rating. Now, I'm looking forward to having an engagement with you at another forum, Minister, soon, I think, very soon, I think, about that issue, that somebody's going to tell the council, I understand, this is what I understand, you can correct me, what I heard came from Cabinet, that you were going to tell the council, look, to ignore that BER stuff. We want to get the houses fixed we only have 11,000 per Vide, to take back a Vide. 11,000 won't do the windows and doors, Minister, and maybe with insulation. Won't do a full retrofit, not a smell of it, not a hope of it. At the costs of everything, the policies that you've had, especially with the carbon tax, has driven up the cost of insulation, madly into the rising price of oil, which is about to rise again now because of what's happening outside of our control, and those BER ratings. And the first thing you've been doing, I didn't believe this when a man came into me from Cundy, Portland, Oregon, up in McGuinness constituency about 7 years ago. Small coal, single sole trader, delivering coal and briquettes, giving a great service to ordinary people. And he came into me and said, Mattie, I'm being put out of business. I said, what's wrong? Oh, he said, any house now goes back to Waterford Council, someone dies or the keys go back for whatever reason. The first thing they do is take out the chimney, block the chimney. That is utter madness. So there's a lot of things have gone into the BER rating, and I know we have to seal our house and not have to be wasting all the chimney to the roof, but we're gone over the top ridiculous. And it's taken out of the chimneys, it's shocking. And with the snowstorm last year, we saw where people they couldn't buy a kettle in these modern houses. Quite be with today, can't call it, as old as I am, but I remember the half doors of many of the houses. And you had plenty for share front of the house. And we had. And people lived, and we had families, and survived. And they weren't frozen with the cold, and they weren't at the doctor every day sick either. So we've lost our way in many, many areas. And as I said, then the whole situation regarding the short-term lets, Airbnbs. We're going to wipe out an industry here, which is an industry, cottage industry, I call it, for the main. People that had maybe a farmhouse, I have a number of them quite close to me, derelict, big families raised. This one I'm talking about, there was 9 of the school of them all. 9 of them on the same road, and they're a fine family. And now they're all married, moved off, and the farmer has a new house. And there's a lovely thatched house, and he's doing a great job, and it's pretty busy. And he did a lovely, we did 2 things. First of all, the council decided, and I tipped them off the time I was on the council, decided that all thatched houses were going to be in a register, and you couldn't do anything with them. You had to maintain them. But then they gave no grants to do them. They would give a couple of £100 to pay the thatcher for 2 days. But this lovely restoration job done in many old houses, farmyard houses especially, and others, the wooden farmyards, and now they're petrified. Because you think there's a magic wand here that we're going to get a massive supply of houses, but they're not. They're going to not give them, they're going to let them go back into maybe this repair again. That's the rock you're going to perish on. It's not that magic figure, some people tell you it is. Also then, you can talk about, the whole situation of the bedsits back here. I remember there's a big furore here, mainly from the left again. Bedsits are terrible, there's only one bed, and people, they had a roof over people's heads. I think 1,000 of them in this town, this city alone. You just wiped out overnight a piece of legislation. And those people many of them were made homeless. I asked the question, were they far better off in the bedsit, albeit small and cramped and all in the one room? They were happy there. And people were happy to provide them for them. And next thing, that was banned because we had to be so upright and so such standards that we couldn't have these dastardly things anymore. Dastardly things anymore. And people we have to get real as well. Crawl before we walk. I was raised in a house, 9 of us, and my mother and father, thank God, and indeed 3 or 4 workmen every day in the house. And people lived in cramped conditions and when my parents got married, they lived in a room of a house, of somebody else's house. But now we want magic wand to get rid of all the people that are supplying those beds. It's now the Airbnbs and the short-term lets. But we're going against what you're aiming to do, to try and to provide houses for people. So the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. As far as I'm concerned, we have too many advisors and too many, people on every radio show and everything else that know everything about housing and how to house people and what to do. When basic things we need to do, go back to basics. And instead of this piece of legislation, we should have a housing emergency, certainly, and go back to the state providing houses by stimulating contractors. And indeed, I'm not talking about the big REITs and the big outside people who come in and bought up all the properties here. No, we should tax the hell out of them because they have done nothing, only destroy people. Stimulate the local contractor. Deal with the planning laws. Tell the planning law to take a holiday or send them out to maybe do something in the Middle East or something, some other job for 2 years. And we go back to basics. Keep the zone land we had. And what did that do with zone land? It drove the land that was left zoned higher costs. I mean, the thing is, kindergarten children wouldn't do it. Then we have to call in the Secretary Generals of the departments because they are accountable and should be accountable. And they haven't been accountable. Across the board. I saw a couple of years ago when a Secretary General was asked to move from one department to the other, he kicked up and he got an extra 60,000. I mean, they're well paid. They should be accountable. They're the accounting officers as well as everything else. And they're not about the costs and the waste. And I mean, the fact that there are voids there and everything else and many other issues that are there. We saw how we can't build a children's hospital. We see how we can't do the light rail network. We haven't a transport link to the airport. God knows how many more things. How could we do all this stuff back, as I said, in the era of Lamass? When we had like the TK Whittaker and visionaries in those departments. Now it's all little fiefdoms have built up and they're all watching their own jobs and promotions in space and governments come and go and they're still there. The permanent government. So I think we have to go back and then we have to, if we were serious, we'd be cutting the VAT, wipe the VAT off of the houses. Between VAT, planning charges and fees to Irish Water and all the rest of it and roads charges on anybody building their own house, it's more than half the cost of the house. So we'll get houses built with common sense. Okay, we can't say that the National Post will lose so much, but we can't build houses and tax them out of I almost said something I shouldn't say, Count Kohler, out of the people. Like I have at least 20 couples in my constituency who are maybe farmers' sons, some aren't. They have sites. They have the wherewithal to get a reasonable, they have a bit of savings and a reasonable savings to get a deposit, and they can't get planning. Because of this, that and the other and several other reasons. Because Antashka and other bodies are sticking their oar in as well. We've all these well-heeled organisations out there now and they're causing wreck. And I'm all right, Jack, pull up the ladder, everybody else. So back to basics. Strip away some of these grandiose powers and call it an emergency, get rid of the VAT and the taxes for, not forever, for 5 years. And do something meaningful. What happened with the MICA? Then, where the big business should have and you know what I'm talking about, the block companies, cement companies should have paid the money there. We add 5% to the meter of cement, of the concrete. What does that do? Automatically adds the price of everybody putting in the foundation, doing the plastering, every bag of cement you buy. So we've all these big plans, but we get the little things. And we think of all the little things and the basics, back to basics, and get it started, we'd have a big help. Now, we have some great housing, and we have a great man now, our new Director of Service and Housing, Jonathan Coney, newly appointed. But I'm Vice Chair now, but I was Chair for a long time of a voluntary housing association, Corkland Newer Voluntary Housing. And we built 14 lovely houses. 11 lay people got into a room after a public meeting, after a horrific beating of a man. He's 95 years of age, and thank God he's alive. But we decided, rather than curse the dark, we'd light a candle, and we lit that candle, and we were told we wouldn't be able to do this. We negotiated with the council, got to site, and this is a fact. Right at half the field that the county council had built in their houses, we built 14 houses. 11 lay people, not one engineer, one architect, one solicitor, nothing. We had to hire in all those advisors, and we built it all. We had a step in the complex, and we did it in about 2 years. We were told it would take 5. Thankfully, we did. The council were building in the same field, and they get 4 winters with houses with no roofs on them, with contractors going bust and everything else. So go back and support the ordinary basic assisted housing associations, not the big conglomerates that have grown up, and there are many of them. The ordinary basic, there's about 300 of them around the country, 14, 15 houses. If every parish built 17 houses, built 10 or 12 houses, that'd make a nice dent, and the elderly would be happy in their own villages. But now most villages can't do it because the sewers are at capacity. And our sewers are at capacity. Since I was going to school, the septic tank was built, and it's still there, and it's at capacity. We can't build anything else. Councillor Mattie McGrath, again, and a group, Positive Steps, want to build a special unit for adult children with disabilities. And they can't do anything because they have a willing developer, they have a site, but there's no capacity in the sewage. We can't do anything. Our hands are tied behind our back, and we're blindfolded, and our mouths were muzzled as well. And that's the problem what we have to break. The red tape, the bureaucracy, and indeed all the legions of NGOs, and that's what many of them are, costing the state a fortune. and getting their oar in as well, and all the fellows with the brass plates inside the offices, and they're pushing paper. During our process of building those houses in the voluntary housing, we discovered, and that'd be good to former TD Noel Davern helped us out at the time, and I'll never forget that he phoned me. I was attracted that we'd been approved for the money, but there was a couple of stages that had to go through the department. After that, it grew to 7 different places between the County Council and the Department of the Environment at the time and Housing, to around the country, different offices that they had to go through all these stages, back and forward, pushing paper. That was cut, I know, down to maybe 3, I think, now. But it's still way too slow. The council will send up something, it'll take 3 to 6 months for the department to look at it, back to the council, further into everything, it's certificate, up and down and back and around the house, like around the, what they call the man on the radio years ago, around the house and mind the dresser, forget his name, great old presenter on radio. That's what's going on. And we can't build the houses. That's what's going on. And we're spending the money and gobbling up the money on all those things. And we have created quango after quango after quango. And every time I see something here, there's a new office set up, a new outfit set up. Trim down the outfits. Go away to waste and deal with, allow the councils to do it. God, they did it in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. The madness came in the 90s and the boom. But we got bad buildings as well. Very bad buildings, and we have them. With all the regulation and all the standards now, we're still getting bad buildings and defective buildings. How we can allow Children's Hospital scandal to go on for that little time. So we need to have a total re-evaluation. Total re-evaluation. Reach in, and there I'm sure, visionaries like T.K. Whittaker and people, you know, in your own vein, like surrounding Matts, and you know you have some good ideas and you're interested and you want to make a difference. And how many housing ministers have we had? How many housing ministers stood here, they were going to build how many houses? But it's not happening. Because we're convoluted and we're convulsed with paperwork, architects, design artists. And when the county council wanted to build 4 houses in my village tonight, they decided they were. They have to go to tender for architects. Sure, they got a kind of a template for 4-house scheme and it can apply to all the villages. Okay, we have to tweak it to the sites. Why do you have to have that all that bureaucratic? And why do you have to go through all appointments of architects and all these stages? We've lost our way. Lost our way. So we need to open the eyes and open the ears and cut out the regulators and all the regulations. I'm not saying build things without any, council planning. Of course we have to have planning. But we have tied ourselves up in knots, absolute total knots, and all the good meaning in the world of what you're doing here is not going, this is not going to do it. And then we have the left ferocity opposed to using better the landlords. We need to come together, the whole lot of us. This is too serious for political. I saw, or I heard someone, another deputy, attacking me a while ago that I never had policy on paper. I have had plenty of policies, and I have had experience. I've done the work, and thankfully, with other people. Couldn't do it on my own. So, I mean, I don't even listen to that because they're going over anyway, So, we need to sit down together on the housing committee. Now, I used to get 4 or 5 years in the housing committee. And honestly, God, I tell you, I ran off at Town Corner. If talk and debates would build houses, wouldn't be shot the house. So we need action. Time for the words is over. And we need common sense above all else. And I have Town Corner and my focus score, I have many landlords, small ordinary landlords, telling me they're out of the game. So what we're doing here with this legislation is going to deny, it's going to take away so many houses beforehand. The magic thing might happen afterwards, and it mightn't work. But they're going to flee the market. And that's what we don't want. I said we have the experience of the bedsits. We wiped off 1,000 of them here, one piece of legislation or statutory instrument, I can't think at the time, but we thought it was a great idea, because people were living in these bedsits. They're far better living in those bedsits. They were many more so happy than to be out in the street, or being the Peter McFerry or wherever. So it's time to refocus. That's why it would take a national government, probably that's not going to happen either, but we need a national imaginative focus group, not a focus group, but focused development. And the government should start off there by cutting the VAT, cutting the taxes, and try and deal with acceptance as an emergency, not talking about it, and try and do something to put houses. And allow the people who can build their own houses to go off first and build them. They're being nobbled and stopped. Where Mahagor comes from.
Thank you.